As we go through life, some relationships warm our hearts, while others silently shake and break us. Letting go of a relationship with someone who was once close feels like quietly carving out a part of your heart. It's not easy, and the sadness lingers longer than words can express. Memories of laughter suddenly come to mind, and sometimes the days spent together come to mind before the days apart. So rather than hating the person who left, it often hurts more to confront the pain left in my heart. However, the Buddha taught that even relationships that bring suffering are ultimately mirrors that help us refine ourselves. Because of those relationships, I was able to look deeper into myself and learn the wisdom and compassion to govern myself. It was said that painful connections did not come to torment me, but to illuminate the wounds and darkness hidden within me. Strangely, connections with people do not all come in the same way. Some people bring a sense of comfort just by being together, creating a deep trust as if we've known each other for a long time, while others can make my heart feel heavy and my nerves tense without saying a word. Even as the time spent together increases, misunderstandings arise and our hearts become heavier. However, the Buddha taught that each of these connections is ultimately a mirror, reflecting our hearts and a teacher guiding us on the path of practice. Moreover, some connections become strangely misunderstood and lead to gossip, as the time spent with that person increases, making our hearts heavier. What could be the reason for this? I am still the same person. Why is it so difficult only when I interact with that person? And why does my heart keep becoming rough? Even when I try to control my heart and make an effort to show compassion, I always feel my center shake when I stand in front of that person. Some days I feel like a bad person, and other days I feel more pathetic for avoiding that person. At such moments when my heart wavers in front of fate, a disciple cautiously opened their mouth. Even though I listen to the same teachings as you and walk the same path, I find that when I meet certain people, compassion blossoms, while with others, I feel inexplicable anguish rising within me. That person didn't say anything bad or harm me, so why do I feel so troubled? The Buddha spoke quietly with a smile. It's not that person who is causing you distress. It's the karma in your heart that is being revealed through that person. A person can only recognize their karma when they encounter the shadow of it. The connection that makes you uncomfortable is not something you are experiencing for the first time. Even if you don't see it or realize it, emotions that have settled somewhere in your heart long ago are simply blooming again through that person. You can only meet that person again because the bond you formed with them in a past life has not yet ended. Therefore, the deeper a person's karma, the more that person reappears, and the connection becomes complicated, with the emotions rising from that bond, not disappearing in an instant. This is because the old karma remains deeply embedded in the heart. The feelings you thought you had forgotten bloom again when you stand in front of that person, shaking your heart and revealing the karma of your life. But remember, every connection is not a coincidence. It is the result of the karma that arises from your heart. If that connection feels painful, it means that your unresolved attachments or anger still remain within it. The moment you realize this, that connection becomes a doorway to practice that lifts you up rather than breaking you down. The reason lies hidden within the current pain. A person who uses their heart well does not only stay beside good people, but also quietly reflects on their own heart amidst painful connections. Do not try to avoid that person instead. You must first look at your own heart that trembles in front of them. All the emotions I am experiencing right now are the language of the karma in my heart. And the moment I become aware of that language, the connection no longer becomes a source of suffering, The disciple who heard these words bowed his head in silence. At that moment, he may have realized it for the first time. It's not that you hate and suffer because of that person, but rather that it is your own inner self that is revealed through that person that is difficult. Is there someone who comes to mind in your heart as you listen to this video right now? Is that person really a bad connection that causes pain? Or is it because the fears and wounds that you didn't even know you had are revealed in front of that person, making it hard to endure those feelings? If that person hadn't been there, we might not have realized where the hatred, anger, anxiety, and obsession within us were hiding. Therefore, the Buddha said, even the connections called bad relationships are, in fact, mirrors that allow you to reach yourself. Before you run away from that person, you must first look into your heart that is being stirred by them. Only when you begin to see connections differently does the long-standing karma start to dissolve. When that person no longer shakes me, the connection will naturally fade away or return as a blessing. Every connection is a mirror of our hearts. What do you see in that mirror right now? From now on, I will examine the deep truth of our connections one by one. Why do some people make me suffer? On a quiet early morning, the disciple was wandering back and forth to the place of practice, with a downcast face for several days, lingering near the Buddha. The Buddha, noticing his troubled heart, quietly said, "Your heavy thoughts are showing on your face. If there is something on your mind, speak up." The disciple clasped his hands together and took a deep breath. "Master, my practice has been wavering lately. No one has harmed me, but when I am with certain people, I feel increasingly uncomfortable, and doubts and anger arise that I usually don't experience. I find myself speaking harshly for no reason, and I feel like I've become a strange person." The Buddha looked into the disciple's eyes and spoke slowly. "It is not that person who made you feel that way, rather. The suffering that was hidden within you has surfaced through that person. Just like throwing a stone into still water creates ripples. That person merely touched the karma in my heart." The disciple bowed their head and quietly asked again, "Master, if I avoid that person, will this suffering not disappear?" The Buddha shook his head, organized his seat under the tree, and said, "Suffering does not disappear by avoidance. What distances you is the person, but the karma within you still follows you. The place you fled may be temporarily empty, but that heart will manifest again through other connections." Then he gently closed his eyes and spoke. "Those who are angry stab themselves first, even without holding a sword. Anger is a fire that burns the heart, and hatred is a poison that harms oneself." The disciple cautiously asked again, "Master, did that person and I have a connection in a past life?" The Buddha smiled and nodded. "Connections are not formed haphazardly. In a past life, if I harbored hatred, I am destined to meet again in a different form, with the one who had that intention and accumulated karma. Without past connections, we wouldn't even brush past each other in this lifetime." The disciple felt a pang in his heart at those words and lowered his head. "Master, I always feel negative emotions through that person, and sometimes even my resolve to practice wavers. Every time that happens, I feel ashamed of myself and end up resenting that person." The Buddha quietly continued, saying that a practitioner is not someone who eliminates emotions. A practitioner is someone who observes without being swayed by emotions. Compassion may arise in front of some people, while anger may flare up in front of others. At that moment, do not hand over the ownership of that emotion to the other person. Instead, embrace and recognize that emotion yourself. That person is not at fault. However, the karma that remained within you was only revealed through that person. The Buddha pointed to a small blade of grass nearby and said, "Just as this grass needs the conditions of wind, rain, and sunlight to grow, karma also needs the conditions of relationships to be revealed. Therefore, that relationship is not meant to torment you, but rather it is a mirror reflecting your karma. The wise learn from those who resent them, and see the mirror of practice in those who are angry. All of this is to be appreciated. The one who teaches compassion is to be thanked, and the one who provokes anger is also your teacher." The disciple quietly nodded with closed eyes. It was as if I was slowly looking at my own heart, like a person standing in front of a mirror for the first time after a long time. The Buddha quietly spoke one last time. Karma does not disappear just because you turn away from it. It vanishes when you acknowledge and face it. If your heart is stirred by that person, then that stirring is the beginning of your practice. The next story is about how to deal with painful relationships. After a long silence, the disciple spoke again, his voice still tinged with quiet sorrow. "Master, if my connection with that person stems from my karma, how should I treat them? Even when I try to gather my thoughts, compassion does not easily arise. I keep recalling the wounds, and my heart crumbles. At each of that person's words, expressions, and attitudes, the Buddha spoke quietly with his eyes closed. Do not try to change that person instead. You must observe your own heart crumbling in front of them. A practitioner is not someone who changes others. Before scolding others, first look within yourself. Those who cannot see the speck in their own eye and only see the faults of others will never escape from suffering." The disciple asked hesitantly, "But, Master, it is true that this person has hurt me. They shook my heart with unjust words and caused misunderstandings about things I did not do. Do I still have to show compassion after experiencing such things?" The Buddha opened his eyes and quietly nodded. Compassion does not mean to forgive. Compassion means to maintain your center, so that your heart is not swayed by the actions of others. When you come to hate that person, you are already sharing the same suffering as them. Hatred does not come from the outside. It grows and spreads within you when your heart accepts that feeling. Therefore, true compassion begins with comforting myself first, so that I do not fall apart. The disciple quietly bowed their head. My tense shoulders have relaxed a bit. So, is it right to distance myself from that person? I still don't have the confidence to fully face that person. The Buddha paused for a moment, looked up at the sky, and quietly said, "To distance oneself is not a sin. However, the reason for distancing should not turn into resentment. If you keep your distance with a fiery heart, your karma will only deepen." The scriptures say that if you distance yourself with a resentful heart, that connection will come back to you. And if you let go with a compassionate heart, that connection will resolve itself. Keep your distance when your heart is calm. Then you will not suffer, and that person will no longer be able to hurt you. The disciple reflected on the Buddha's words. "Master, I have come to realize how unstable I am through that person. If that is my lesson, how should I approach my heart when I meet that person in the future?" The Buddha quietly sat under the tree and calmly turned his gaze towards his disciples. Karma does not disappear in an instant, but the awareness of that karma and the determination not to create new karma is the beginning of practice. Do not blame that person instead. Quietly observe the feelings that arise through them. Whenever your mind wavers, do not blame the wavering, but practice noticing it. The moment you resolve not to be led by karma, that connection becomes not a shackle that binds my ankles, but a lamp that illuminates my heart. And finally, he added, "It's okay if the resentment that lingers in your heart doesn't completely disappear. What matters is to watch over yourself so that you don't chase after that resentment or get trapped by it. True practice begins not by laughing next to good people, but by striving not to let go of compassion even in the face of painful relationships. This is the third story. A connection that was rekindled as a fisherman. One day, a wealthy man from a distant village came to find the Buddha. His face was etched with fatigue and anger, and his eyes held a deep-seated sorrow. Zhuangzi began to speak in a low voice while bowing, saying, "O world-honored one, I am currently engulfed in suffering because of one person. That person is my neighbor, who appears to be an ordinary farmer on the outside, but he slanders me, spreads false rumors, and even makes my family uncomfortable. I have been so angry that I have argued with him several times, trying to prove that he is in the wrong. But nothing has improved. Rather, I only feel more and more entangled. Oh, Blessed One, I want to sever this bond. Is it possible to live without hating that person?" The Buddha quietly spoke after listening to the merchant's words until the end. "That person is not someone I am meeting for the first time in this life. I created karma in a past life and have been carrying it with me until now." The merchant was taken aback and asked, "Are you saying I knew that person in my past life? So is that person currently tormenting me because of the grudge from back then?" The Buddha nodded and said, "In your past life, you deceived that person and gained benefits through lies. That person lost everything and left, harboring resentment until the day they died. That heart transformed and was reborn, appearing by your side in this life. A person creates their life through their karma, and they are reborn according to that karma. No matter where you are, that karma will not let you go." Zhuangzi closed his eyes in silence and then quietly spoke. "So, do I have to accept that person? Do I have to endure all of that person's torment for this connection to end?" The Buddha looked at Zhuangzi with a calm gaze and said, "Enduring is not the end. Realizing is the end. When hatred arises towards that person, do not be drawn into that hatred. Recognize that he is also a being reborn from suffering. It is not he who torments you, but the hatred within his heart that moves him to act this way. You can cut off that hatred when one person ends their karma. The chain of that connection stops. Do not repay resentment. With resentment, only conclude that connection with compassion. In this world, resentment does not sync with more resentment. Only through compassion can that resentment be resolved. This is the eternal truth." Zhuangzi quietly bowed his head and was unable to say anything for a long time. Tears welled up in my eyes, and it was a moment when long-held resentment quietly melted away. He sat there for a long time before finally opening his mouth. "O Blessed One, now I will see myself through that person. I will conclude the karma I could not sever in this life." The Buddha quietly closed his eyes and nodded. "That person is your practice place. That person is your companion on the path. Whether you see that connection as a source of resentment or as an opportunity for merit will determine your next life. The fourth story I am changing thanks to that person." A season has passed. During this time, the disciple quietly but diligently continued their practice. Keeping the teachings heard from the Buddha in their heart, their face had become much more relaxed than before, and there was no longer any resentment in their eyes. That day, the disciple quietly sat beside the Buddha. After a moment of silence, he spoke in a gentle voice. "Master, in the past, thinking of that person would first shake my heart. Feelings of injustice would rise, anger would swell, and I couldn't understand why I had to endure such treatment. The pain never left me. But one day, I suddenly realized that if that person hadn't existed, I would not have known that there was so much anger and attachment deep within my heart. The Buddha quietly closed his eyes and nodded. Pain teaches the heart. It does not reveal itself in calm waters. The waves rise and pile up on the bottom, and you saw your own shadow through that person. The disciple's voice has become quieter. During the time I lived blaming that person, I thought all my suffering came from outside. But now I realize that the suffering was the shadow of hatred that was within me. My feelings of blaming that person have now turned into gratitude. Thanks to that person, I learned how to look at my own heart. The Buddha spoke with a calm gaze. Karma is not something that brings pain. It is a mirror that reveals the shadows of the heart that you were unaware of. That person has no reason to be angry with you. That person was merely swayed by the hatred in their heart. You accepted that and overcame yourself. The Dhammapada says that true victory lies not in defeating others, but in mastering one's own mind. The one who conquers themselves is greater than a general who has won 1,000 battles. Tears welled up in the disciple's eyes. Master, that person has not changed, but I have changed. In the past, I would have gotten angry at what was said, but now I can let it pass quietly. I can also calm my heart in situations where I used to feel nervous about how to react. That person still looks the same as before, but my feelings towards them are now completely different. The Buddha spoke with a gentle smile, saying, "You are the practitioner." People do not change easily, but the heart can change in an instant. Troubling relationships do not come to test you. They come to bring out the compassion and wisdom within you. If you let that connection go with hatred, karma will follow you again. But if you embrace that connection with compassion, the karma will melt away in that moment. Those who do not blame anyone and only look at their own hearts are the most peaceful in this world. The disciple joined his hands and bowed to the Buddha. In his eyes, there was a lingering calmness, and in his heart, a prayer of gratitude flowed. From that day on, he no longer resented that person. Instead, he quietly acknowledged that it was thanks to that person that he became a practitioner. Chapter 5. When the connection ends, what remains in the heart? One day, the disciple quietly approached and sat beside the Buddha. Unlike before, a gentle smile lingered on his face. It was a calm light that only those who have passed through a long tunnel of suffering can possess. In the quiet prayer hall where a gentle breeze passed through, the disciple quietly began to speak. Master, my connection with that person has now completely faded from my heart. That person no longer shakes me, and I no longer have feelings for him inside me. Rather than disappearing, I simply let that connection flow away. The Buddha nodded quietly and said, "Good. Now my heart has let go of that connection." A person must let go in their heart for the connection to truly end. Even if the body is apart, if the heart is still tied, that connection will continue to follow you. But you have let go of that bond in this life. The disciple closed his eyes for a moment and exhaled quietly. And then he slowly opened his mouth. Master, in the past, I wanted to receive an apology from that person. I hoped they would understand my feelings and say that they too had suffered. But at some point, all those desires disappeared. No matter what feelings that person had, it no longer matters. Now I realize that person must have also lived in suffering. That thought came to me first. The Buddha quietly continued, saying, "You have extinguished your karma because you do not cling to that connection and do not hold on to your emotions. It no longer brings suffering." The scriptures say that connections released from the mind flow away like a lotus scattered by the wind, leaving no trace. and the mind becomes peaceful like still water. The disciple closed his eyes and bowed his head. In that heart, a silent gratitude was flowing down. The Buddha spoke gently again, saying that this connection has now become a merit. If it had been tied with hatred, it would have become karma. But since it was concluded with compassion, it has become a merit. Thanks to that person, you have overcome your troubles, found the center of your heart, and come to understand what true practice is. Therefore, that connection was not a source of suffering, but a teacher. The person you thought was a source of distress was actually the one who helped you the most. And finally, the Buddha spoke very quietly. What remains in my heart now is not the Buddha's deeds, but virtue. As we go through life, sometimes just having someone by our side can be a blessing, while at other times, someone may torment me and bring out the darkness within. However, the Buddha said that all these connections are ultimately a mirror for my own cultivation. If we can conclude our painful connections with compassion, just like the story we shared today, that connection will no longer be a burden, but will become a virtue that remains in our lives. I hope that the connection and feelings that have lingered in your heart for a long time will now flow slowly. If there was a sentence in today's video that resonated deeply with you, please share it in the comments. Your one line can become a light that brightens someone else's heart. Thank you for always being with me. May your day shine quietly like the moonlight. Have a peaceful day.